Hi. Alright, so today I want to talk a little bit more about shame. And I just want to tell you a little bit about where it comes from. And um, I know for me, when I was really ill, suffering, I couldn't, probably, I would say for at least 3 years, so 3 full years, I couldn't look anybody in the eye. Not a stranger, not a friend, not anybody. I couldn't look at people in the eye. I didn't want them to see me, right? I couldn't let them see me, right? It was awkward. I couldn't look at them in the eye. And every time somebody asked me a question, this is my personal story, but every time, you just walk by people on the street or on a trail or an old acquaintance or a family member, anybody you run into, and they say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" That's like the standard question. I was like a deer in the headlights, okay? So I was just, I couldn't answer the question, "Hi, how are you?" I couldn't answer because the answer was so awful. And I didn't want to say fine or good. I couldn't even bring myself to say I'm okay or fine or anything. So I just changed the subject. This was how I lived for 3 years. Every day I would walk by people and they'd say, "Hi, how are ya?" And I would say, "Oh, isn't it a nice day out today? Oh, it's nice to see the sun." Or I would just not answer, right? So somebody would say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And I'd say, "Oh, just busy with the kids. Oh, my kids have baseball today." Or I would deflect the question, "How are you?" Because I couldn't answer that question uh, with a true statement, right? I couldn't even tolerate the question because my answer was so horrible and what was happening inside me was so horrific that there was no words and I couldn't answer. So on the outside I just was like mute or a statue, or someone would say, "Hi, how are you?" and I'd just look at them like I couldn't find words. I couldn't answer the question. And so for a long time I couldn't look anybody in the eye. And because of, everything going inside of you when you're really chronically ill or when you're seriously ill, there's a lot of shame. And the shame comes from many things, you know. First of all, you've probably been told by your doctor, "Oh, this can't happen. It's all in your head." You aren't believed by regular doctors, by other practitioners, by family members, by friends, by whatever. It's very hard to put words to serious chronic illness that people can't see, and autoimmune conditions and pain and all of these things. And so you already have maybe tried to prove yourself over and over, or had to explain, or got the feeling that people judged you and that you were wrong and that nobody believes you. And just to have that constant, like to be already suffering and to have that constant feeling inside you that you're completely alone. Because not only is this terrible to have to go through the symptoms and the suffering of your illness, but you're alone because you feel like you're being judged and criticized and not believed, and people just somehow dismiss you or dismiss your symptoms, or it's very lonely. It's a very lonely feeling. So people with chronic disease kind of accept this lonely feeling, like it sort of becomes your new normal. You go from being one of society to sort of being shunned from society, like as if you were normal and you suddenly contracted the plague or contagious something, and now you're sort of shunned, like AIDS patients in a way feel. So it's no wonder that we feel shame, okay? But some people take that on as an identity now, and I know I did. I took that on like I was full of shame, right? I couldn't look anyone in the eye. I couldn't even answer, "How are you?" I couldn't look at people in the eye. And one day, maybe 3 years into it, I said, "Okay, I'm going to go for a walk on the beach today, and when I see a stranger, I'm going to just, no matter what happens, I'm going to look that stranger in the eye, smile and say hello. It's not going to kill me. They don't have to know my whole story. I don't have to hide anything from them. I don't have to prove anything from them. They don't have to even know anything. I'm just going to connect with their eyes and smile and say hello. And so I remember this very clearly because I went for a walk on the beach and I see a person in the distance. So I'm, preparing myself and mentally talking to myself to go up and say hello to this person. And as the person approached, I saw that I recognized them. They were a familiar person. And it was my therapist who I started this whole journey with, who I went to right in the very beginning when everything was breaking down, and she was trying to help me, but nobody understood what was happening to me, and I was getting worse and worse and worse, and I felt a lot of shame because I wasn't better yet. Here I was going to run into her, 4 years later, and I was still sick, and I knew she was going to ask me, "How are you?" And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I went up. She said, "Hi, Lisa, how are you?" First question. And I looked at her in the eye and I smiled. And I just started to cry. I started to sob in front of this woman. And I said, I wish I could tell you that I was better. And I wanted to. I always envisioned seeing you one day, later, and telling you that I was healthy. But the truth is, I'm just not yet. It's been a long haul. It's been a long, lonely journey, and I'm walking through it. And she put her arm around me and she gave me a hug, and she said, sometimes we need to do that. She said, "I'm sorry the path hasn't been easier for you." And it was just a simple conversation, and we exchanged a few more words, and I said, maybe I'll contact you sometime, and I left. But as I walked away, I thought to myself, isn't this the power of the universe? Is this the power of the universe trying to talk to me? I still get tears in my eyes thinking of that story, because I made a conscious effort that day, over 3 years, that I was going to just, say okay and say hi to a stranger, and when they asked me how I was, or I was just going to say great and keep walking, right? I was going to look someone in the eye. And it happened to be one of the people that I probably most didn't want to see, didn't want to run into. And so it was that day, and after I walked past her, I probably spent the rest of, the next couple hours just crying, just sobbing, and thinking, gosh, I have so much shame about myself, and it's my story. It's not their story about me, it's my story. There was a famous monk who once said, I'm not what I think I am, and I'm not what you think I am, but I am what I think you think I am. And think about that. Doesn't that just floor you? That's true. We make up these stories in our head about what people think of us, and we believe it. That person might not even be thinking that thought, but we are what we think. I am what I think you think I am. And that's never more true when it comes to shame. So, shame is something that we're doing to ourselves. Really, it is. It's a truly self-imposed feeling. Okay? And it's something that you can try to untangle. And the first step I like to do is look at strangers, smile at strangers, say hello to strangers, connect with a stranger, because you already know that they don't judge you, or they don't have a preconceived notion of you. So it's easy to start there. It's harder to meet old people. I will tell you, I still run into people that knew me before, friends that knew me before, who they weren't close friends, so they didn't know everything that went on with this, but they were friends, and I had them to my house, or I went out to restaurants with them and parties and different things, and I see them now still. And I know they wonder, like, what happened to her? Like, what on earth happened to her? And they must be thinking these things of me and judging me. And I can run into, and they probably aren't, but I feel like they are. And I feel like I can't feel good about myself until I can run into these people with my head held high. And the only way I can hold my head high is by being completely well and having all my symptoms gone and being able to tell my story, like, this happened to me, but now I'm completely better, and I did this. I did this to heal myself. And that's how I feel like I can hold my head up high. So I still have days when I run into these people and I feel like a huge cloud rolls in, comes up in me, a tornado is swirling inside me, and I allow this big cloud of shame to cover me. When I see them, I have a hard time looking in them in the eye or smiling or saying hello. I just want it to be a quick conversation and leave. And the truth of the matter is that's because I don't feel comfortable with myself. But I'm getting better, and I'm being able to talk to more people and even old acquaintances, and I don't have to tell them the truth. I don't even have to talk about my situation, but when I'm standing in front of them, I'm telling my own self, I love you, Lisa, and you are good enough. You're worthy, and it doesn't matter what you think they think of you, of what you think they think you are. You'll never know what they truly think, right? So it's a choice. It's a choice. Don't let what you think they think you are define who you really are, because it will always be covered and cloaked in shame that you're not good enough. You know, you haven't healed. You're not good enough. You're not worthy enough. You're not something, whatever. It's a feeling that you can control, and all you have to do is concern yourself with what you think you are. And it all comes down to accepting yourself, loving yourself, and feeling proud of yourself, and knowing that you're on your own journey and they're on their own journey, and you don't know their journey and they don't know your journey. And it's okay that maybe you have these feelings inside you, like shame and feeling like you're not living up to the standard that you want to be in front of those people. You're not the person that you want them to see, but you are a person, and you are you, and you're doing your best, and you deserve even more love and more value and more respect. And if they don't see it, that's okay. You have to see it. You have to see it. That your journey has been a hard journey, and you'll get there in your own time. And so shame is self-inflicted. So it's just becoming aware when you feel that tension or you feeling that shame that you're just not up to the standard that you want to be. It's mostly self-imposed. It's not really the thoughts of others. It's your own perceptions of what they think of you. And it's usually always wrong. So you're better off to choose good thoughts there, and imagine people thinking good of you and rooting you on, and like you're the protagonist in a movie, the hero of the story who's in the weeds, in the hard part, in the middle of the movie where everything's going wrong. But you can imagine all these other people watching the movie, sitting there watching your movie and rooting for the hero, because people do root for the hero. People root for the underdog. People root for the person who hasn't quite triumphed yet. And sure, everybody wants that happy ending, but you can imagine that they're wishing you the best to get the ending instead of judging you that you're not there yet. So I hope this was helpful in a small way. It's a tough topic, and I'll try to do more on actual ways to release shame. But I think just becoming aware of it and changing your own perception is step number one.